Good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the 20-minute fashion distraction. I'm Jackie Jenkins. You know what we do every Wednesday night. We talk total fashion. I trust that everybody had a wonderful week as we are actually at the beginning of summer, and a summer where we're actually able to enjoy it. So really grateful for that. As I shared, I'm Jackie Jenkins, the founder of Sophisticated Curations. If you are not following the Sophisticated Curations page on Facebook, please do that. And please also follow us on Instagram. And I also have a special request. Hey, Jocelyn, if you could share the show, shares actually helps with the whole analytics. I'm sorry, logarithms in terms of actually keeping the show moving. So we appreciate if you could do that. And before we get to tonight's guest, I actually want to just shout out our guest from last week. I don't know how many of us are here, but Erica from Lashalytics. I got my Lashalytics. Thank you so much. And I tried them today and they are fabulous. Not only are they fabulous, they're easy to put on. I can share some of the tips, but I just really wanted to say, Erica, thank you so much for helping me to keep it fabulous with my Lashalytics. So tonight, not only are we going to talk about fashion, but we're going to talk about fashion and being fit. And I am going to bring on my guest, Mr. Tony Laurent. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Jackie, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
Good. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So I quickly introduced you as Tony Laurent, the fitness guru. But what I like to do is share a little bit about who you are and why it was so important for you to join us. And then I have a little personal note that I'll bring. So Tony Laurent established Muscle and Bone NYC in 2012. And the company focuses on fitness and apparel. And I don't know, you may have seen plenty of the Muscle and Bone. Plenty of individuals wearing Muscle and Bone on Instagram, showing off some of the wares. And I'm going to share a quote from our guest. And basically it goes, "Our bodies are losing the ability to move optimally as a result of jobs and lifestyles that require us to sit for extended hours every day, many times resulting in aches and pains." So what Tony's going to talk about is not only how we correct that, but more importantly, how we can correct that in our daily lives. Tony is a native from the South Side of Chicago. Not only does he say Chicago, but the South Side of Chicago.
That is right.
And he spent, before starting Muscle and Bones, he spent 15 years doing proprietary trading in NYC, which he still does on the investment side. And I love this piece, and I didn't know this, is that he also mentors young people in stocks, options, and insurance. And in 2004, he started Kelly's Loving Hands, which is a non-profit dedicated to teaching African-American youth about financial markets. So kudos to you for that. Not only keeping us fit, but also keeping our wallets fit. Tony is my Morehouse brother, and he is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, and I think there's a few of your friends will be joining us. Yes, yes, yes. And on a personal note, I actually have the pleasure to work out with Tony. I think we're up to 3 times a week, and I have been doing it for the last 4 months. And I will say, not only has it been a great workout, but I think I am vineyard ready. So I thank you for that, Tony. Really, really just, it's a great class. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I see Claudia's here and Adrian is here. Yes, yes, yes.
Adrian. Hey, yo, Adrian.
Oh, that's good. That was a little Philly there. I like that. So, Tony, can you talk about what made you want to focus on making people feel better by helping them with their body alignment?
Okay, great question. Again, thanks for having me on, Jackie. So it started off, I know this is going to be hard for you to imagine, but at one point in my life, I was really self-absorbed. Yes, I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds completely ridiculous, inconceivable.
You must have a twin. Okay.
Yeah, the evil one. So long story short, I went through some really rough times, and, rough times kind of reveal who we are. That's part of like just anything difficult, right? Like pledging, whatever. So during those difficult times, I was able to kind of dig in and figure out what was going on with me. I was so focused on that I was completely unhappy and unable to see this way. So the more I started focusing on, just kind of improving my own particular weaknesses in an internal, intellectual, or spiritual context, I started realizing that I had these serious ailments all throughout my body. And I figured out that I just kind of thought that maybe they were kind of unrelated. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But the bottom line was that I knew I needed to fix some things structurally in my body. And I had gone to physical therapists, I had gone to physiatrists, I had gone to acupuncturists, acupressurists. I mean, you name it. I had gone through all kinds of different massage practitioners, and I'd get some short-term relief, but I couldn't get any long-term relief, especially having had both of my shoulders surgically repaired. I'd keep on coming up to these, I'd bump against these pains, and I couldn't quite break through. So finally I said, you know what, I'm a trainer. Let me go ahead and dig in and figure this whole thing out myself. So after getting some real basics down about the importance of stacking the joints and the importance of functionality within the joints, not just doing specific, exercises to make our body aesthetically more pleasing, but to really learn how to stack the body and prepare it for movement. I started getting some better results. And then I started to incorporate, the specific movements that, as for my shoulder, as an example, your scapula, that shoulder blade, it's a triangular shaped bone. And it looks like a real simple, straightforward kind of bone. But that thing has 20 something muscles that attach to it. And so you'd never think that. So what that lets you know is that those attachments, the tendons, are very, very thin. If you have 20 something attachments on that back flat bone, that means there are very, very skinny tendons that are attaching to it. And that means they're overlapping. And not only do you have the tendons, you have things called ligaments, you have things called bursa, you have things called, it's this substance called fascia. And all these things have to fit together and slide and glide next to each other. You have nerves. So after figuring out that, the importance of stacking the joints properly when you move, started getting all this relief. And that led to even deeper study, more intense reading, more intense workshops, classes, and just got deeper and deeper at making my own body, my own particular guinea pig. And the results were amazing. And next thing I knew, I was literally healing people who had these, random kind of issues that were, I'm not talking about severe tears or breaks. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the average person who will have a desk job and, will have bad posture, which leads to ankle problems or a hip problem, a knee problem, low back problem, neck, shoulder. And I can take that person who has not been able to work out rather, or hang out with their kids and play the games or the sports that they've been loving their entire lives. They had to shut that down. So they had to adjust their quality of life around their pains. Right. So when I started realizing that I had this little gift and I was able to get people to do those things that they love to do, but have been away from for so long, I was hooked. And from that point forward, I just wanted to kind of just spread this message that you don't have to use your pains, your prior injuries, and the physical restrictions that you have as kind of a virtual death sentence. You can do the things that you used to do. It takes some time and a process to get back to them. But if you're dedicated and if you really want to get back there, we can get you back there. So there's my journey.
That is an awesome journey. Not only is it true because I actually see it in the class, but it's also taught me a lot about my body and how to think about stacking it. We're going to talk about stacking it. I see Karen's here, Natasha's here, Adrian's here, Monifa's here, Singleton. I'm telling you, it's just a great group. And Deborah's here. Love the topic. So you mentioned stacking the body, and you also mentioned making sure that we're just not aesthetically looking great. What are we doing wrong when we're working out? Like what are we missing?
Okay. So the body is an amazing thing. And the more I dig into it, the more I realize there's so much more to this stuff. It's ridiculous. So whenever we move, and I'm including movement and exercise. I'm not just talking about in exercising. I'm going to talk about movement because I heard a quote: if this dot is exercise, this whole circle is movement.
Wow.
So when it comes to movement, you're either preparing your body to go into injury, or you're worsening a current injury, or you're taking your body out of injury. Or there's a fourth one, preventing injury from that point forward. And these movements come from things like sitting at a desk. And it's not just sitting at the desk that's the problem. It's sitting at the desk for prolonged periods that take your body into these distorted positions. And those distorted positions have an impact on your neck. They have an impact on your shoulders. They have an impact on the entire spine, which goes to your hips, and that goes to your knees, and that goes to your ankles, and that goes to your feet. So if you're just sitting there in this position, fighting gravity is beating you down, is yanking you into these compromised positions, we go to the gym. We don't realize that we're standing or sitting like this. And somebody will say, sit up straight. And you'll say, I am. And then if you start to do an exercise in this position with your shoulders in particular, all you're doing now is you're taking a bad position and you're putting it under a load. And when you load up a compromised position, it's a matter of time before you start tearing or fraying or irritating stuff because it's now rubbing in spots where it should not rub.
And great example, but I'm going off script here. So in the middle of COVID, you did a class where we talked about the position of our computer and tilting our head down, and the fact that for every tilt, it's almost like the size of a bowling ball, and the impact that has. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because what that has caused me to do is to actually lift my computer so that I'm not creating the tilt. But just can you share a little insight on that? And Heather's here. Cool. Hey, Heather. And Tracy.
Hey, Heather. Hey, Tracy. Hey, Singleton, long time. All right. So I'm going to demonstrate something to you, okay? All right. So obviously this is a spine, okay? So the skull sits on top of this, and the average human head weighs about 7 to 11 pounds, okay? So that's like having a bowling ball sitting on top of this structure. So as this structure has this bowling ball set on top of it, remember, your body is structured in such a way that as long as it has integrity, the structure won't be compromised. As soon as you start to compromise it with the bowling ball in this position, the bowling ball could be stacked with your ears over your shoulders. The second you start to lose that stacked position in terms of your head on your spine, it's the equivalent, every half of a degree is the equivalent of like, I think 5 pounds, extra pounds on your spine. So you go to a half a degree, 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees. At some point, you're going to have an extra 25, 35 pounds, 45 pounds on this structure. And then you start getting these bulging areas that are the result of these little discs in between the vertebrae. These little discs get compressed, and the vertebrae begin to make those discs push outward. Mm-hmm. When they push outward, the nerves, these little yellow things at the tips here, these are the nerve roots. Those nerves go crazy. Now, here's where science and medicine drops the ball. Science treats the pain instead of the problem. And that's why these problems get worse over time. The nerves are trying to send information to your brain that says something is wrong. I need you to correct this. So I'm sending you this message of pain. And then the brain's responsibility is to tell us to respond. Many of us respond with no action. We try to just ignore it, or we'll take a painkiller, right? Which is what science has done. It's taught us to treat the pain instead of treating the problems. When you treat the pain and you start to have these procedures that, will fuse discs or will just, if you take a painkiller or whatever, all you're doing is hiding further damage because the problem's still there. Everything's still rubbing. It's just that you're not feeling it. And because you're not feeling it, it's getting worse and worse and worse until at some point it's going to break. And then you're going to really find yourself in some trouble.
So when we start off the classes, we spend a fair amount of time rolling. Can you, first of all, explain what rolling is? My sister says, "Wow, like, yeah, this is very helpful." And what are we doing when we're rolling?
When we're rolling, Jackie, in the beginning of the session, so the science has evolved over time. So when I was coming up, I know you're much younger than I. You're at least 15, 20 years younger than I am.
Pretty
but
much.
Way back in like ancient times, your gym teacher would tell you, okay, grab your ankles and just stretch, stretch your hamstrings, or, you want to hold these positions to lengthen muscle, to stretch them out. Well, science has changed and said, don't do that. You don't want to stretch a cold muscle. If you stretch a cold muscle, two things are happening. One, if you're not creating little tears in it, you're just weakening the muscle. So a long muscle is a weak muscle. A short muscle is not necessarily strong, but it's more active than a long stretched out muscle. So what we do in the beginning of class is we foam roll, and we're trying to identify problem spots on muscle. Typically, it can be in the tendon if the problem is the muscle. If it's not in the actual muscle and it's closer to the belly of the muscle, which is in the middle. So by the way, tendons connect muscles to bone. So tendons are at the end of the muscle. So if it's in the belly of the muscle, then that means it probably is not the actual muscle, although it could be. It's probably the stuff that wraps around the muscle called fascia. So fascia is this almost hair-like webbing that surrounds the muscle. It surrounds everything. It's all over the body, by the way. And science is discovering more and more things that fascia is responsible for. The obvious one is it allows muscles to slide over each other and not get stuck. So when fascia gets knotted up, it gets like hair. It gets really balled up and knotty. So we're trying to iron out and flatten some of those knots of fascia. So that's what we do when we roll. We're drawing blood to the area. We're increasing the body's temperature, and we're trying to find any adhesions in the actual muscle or knots of fascia to flatten them out. There you go.
Awesome. So, and Karen asked the question. She's like, "Oh, I wish I could be in New York to have the class." But can you talk about, because we actually do the class virtually. Tony, can you talk about how the audience can find you, what the class is like, and any contact information? And Adrian, yes, thank you. I have been working out, so I'm feeling a little bit stronger. Yes, yes, yes.
So yeah, Jack, you've come a long way, because when you came aboard, you had just twisted your ankle. So we were just trying to rebuild that ankle. We were trying to teach your foot how to communicate between the communication process between your lateral hip muscles and your feet, and then the stuff in between. We're trying to recondition them how to work together. So you've come a long way in a very short amount of time. To your question, the way I can be found, and I have a banner in the background. I wish I had brought it up here, but I can be found at Muscle and Bone NYC. Now, if you put underscore between all the words, muscle underscore and A&D underscore bone, BONE underscore NYC, that's on Instagram. I'm just Muscle and Bone on Facebook. And if you want to set up any appointments, you can find me at thejointwhisperer.com, www.thejointwhisperer.com.
Awesome, Tony. Thank you so much. And I see Jocelyn's here. And yes, Tracy, I will bring my fancy glass of water tomorrow morning to our class. as we and what I will do, hi Claudia, and actually there was one. We're gonna run a couple minutes over if we can, but Claudia raised, and I see Dawn Marcellus here.
Hey,
Thank
Dawn.
you. So Claudia raised a point, and I just want to go back. We're gonna run over a little bit, but I thought it was a great point. Hi Van. She mentioned the point about dealing with alignment issues with her trainer now, and the being sedentary with the pandemic. Any quick like exercise in addition to the rolling that people should think about? Should we try and stand more or walk around more during the day?
So the best thing I can give anybody is, I don't like to give the quick tip thing because there's so much more, when it comes to position. Think about a duck. When you see a duck on water, it looks like it is just chilling. But what's going on under that water is it's going crazy, right? So the problem with giving tips is people think that they can look at somebody and say, okay, do a plank. So what they'll do is they'll just kind of be on their forearm or on their hands, and they won't pay much attention to what their shoulders are doing, and they won't pay much attention to what their pelvis is doing. And that's where the plank is. They just see people on their hands or on their forearms and on their feet. It's like, no, the magic is in the middle. So what I will say is when it comes to a plank, this is one of the best exercises that you can do, requires no weights. It's a body weight function. This is the most important, these little 3 points I'm going to give you. All right. Tuck your chin whenever you are in the prone position or face down doing a push-up or flat on your belly. When you're in the prone position, always tuck your chin, all right? What you're doing when you do that is two things. First of all, you're strengthening what's called the deep cervical flexors in your neck. You're making sure that your spine has enough muscular support to help keep this bowling ball position. And what you're also doing is you're undoing all the stuff when you're doing this tech neck all day long, looking like this. Okay, so tuck your chin. That's one. When you're in the plank, this is one of the first times I'll tell you this. I want you to protract your shoulders. Don't retract your shoulders in the plank. Protract them. Push them out. So tuck your chin. Protract your shoulders. Last thing is this. Okay, there's something called pelvic tilt. There's anterior pelvic tilt, which is kind of like Donald Duck butt. And then there's posterior pelvic tilt, which is Pink Panther butt. When you're in the plank, you want to have a tucked chin, protract the shoulders, and you want to have Pink Panther butt.
I love it. Everything was fabulous. There's so many comments in here. I also know it's a great class because over half of our class is on the chat. So thank you guys for showing up. Hey, one thing that I say every week, and I really do mean it, there are some things in life that we can't get back, and time is one of them. And so I thank you so much, Tony, for sharing the time and the insight. And hey, Deborah, and hang on for a minute. You guys, thank you for hanging in there. We went about 3 minutes over, but I think it was totally worth it. Join me next week because we actually will have a stylist with us. And as we're slowly starting to think about going back to the office, Pamela is going to share some celebrity tips on what we should think about wearing, getting back to work. So see you next week. Hang on, Tony. Thank you guys for showing up every Wednesday.
See you guys in class.
Yes.